Okay, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today we're analyzing a uniquely minimalist, honestly kind of abstract source text uploaded by Eva Mihail. Now, at first glance, you'd probably think an explainer about the legendary figures from a massive anime franchise like Naruto would be, filled with encyclopedic lore, long histories, complex family trees, all that stuff. But actually, scratch that. Today we're looking at a transcript that strips all of that away, completely. It leaves us with something entirely different. We are going to treat this specific source material almost like a fascinating piece of digital poetry, and we're going to break down exactly what it might be trying to tell us.
But before we even get into the data, I want you to just take a second and imagine something. Imagine how pure, overwhelming energy might actually manifest if it were translated directly into an unfiltered transcript. When we're talking about massive, earth-shattering power contained inside a human host, which, by the way, is the core concept of our source material's title, how do you even write that down? Like, does it sound like a perfectly structured, complex sentence? Or does it sound more like a system completely overloading, just struggling to articulate the sheer intensity of the forces at play? Keep that question in the back of your mind as we reveal the transcript we're working with today.
Because this brilliantly illustrates our entire source material. Just take it in. A relentless, completely bizarre 16-word transcript. Heat, up here, heat, nah. I mean, it literally reads like a machine breaking down, right? Or perhaps it's a perfectly distilled representation of boiling energy. We're going to deconstruct this exactly as it was presented to us, pulling apart its rhythmic structure and mapping out how this tiny, glitchy fragment of text actually communicates a massive thematic idea.
Okay, let's get into Section 1. Title, Context, the Jinchuriki.
So, based entirely on the source's title, we know we're grounded in the subjects of Jinchuriki and tailed beasts within the Naruto and Boruto universe. Just for a little context, a Jinchuriki is a human who has a literal monster made of pure, fiery chakra sealed inside them. It's intense. When that power leaks out, it visually manifests as this boiling, burning cloak of energy. The air around them actually distorts. It literally burns. So, when we see the title All Jinchuriki of the Tailed Beasts, we're basically being promised a comprehensive look at individuals who are entirely defined by their containment of this volatile, burning energy.
But notice the jarring contrast here. We have this complex title up against the extreme stripped-down minimalism of the actual transcript. The title is 10 words long, full of specific, highly descriptive proper nouns. It sets this scholarly, almost cataloging expectation for the audience. And yet, the transcript delivers 16 words that completely abandon traditional language. No way around it. It rejects narrative entirely in favor of visceral repetition. It's almost as if the transcript itself couldn't handle the heavy lore and simply melted down into the most basic physical sensation associated with these characters.
Moving right along to Section 2, the phenomenon of heat.
If we treat this transcript as a vital data set, the vocabulary breakdown visually proves how a single concept completely dominates the source material. Look at the overwhelming dominance of that one word. Out of a 16-word total vocabulary pool, almost the entire visual space of the data is consumed by a single repetition. The tiny little slivers remaining, they just represent the briefest of anomalies in an otherwise entirely uniform landscape. Guys, this isn't just repetition, it's total thematic saturation.
And when you break down the exact math, you can really see the sheer disproportionate play here. We have exactly 14 instances of the word heat. Then we have exactly one instance of the spatial phrase up here, and exactly one instance of the isolated letter N. The repetition of heat forms this unbroken, towering wave of intensity that mathematically represents raw power. It's like a rhythmic drumbeat. Imagine a gauge trying to measure a temperature that is constantly redlining. That is exactly what we're looking at. It's a system trapped in a singular, hyper-focused state of being.
Now, tracing the linear progression of the transcript from start to finish, we see this relentless baseline that is suddenly interrupted by a totally unexpected peak. For the first 11 words, it's just an unbroken chant. Heat, heat, heat. It establishes this really heavy trance-like state. But then, right at word 12, the timeline spikes with up here. It's a sudden jolt in the data. Then words 14 and 15 pull us right back down into that boiling baseline with two more heat, before the whole thing violently flatlines at word 16 with the letter N. This timeline shows us that we aren't just looking at a random glitch, it has a very distinct rhythm, a climax, and a brutally sudden end.
Which brings us to Section 3, the spatial shift upwards.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this exact number, 14.
There are 14 total invocations of burning energy that just hypnotize the viewer. 11 of them happen consecutively right at the start. When you hear or read a word that many times in a row, it undergoes semantic satiation. It completely loses its meaning as a word and simply becomes a sound, a pulse, a vibration. The creator of this text is practically forcing us to sit in that burning sensation for a deeply uncomfortable amount of time before allowing any new information to enter the equation.
And then, out of nowhere, the transcript isolates this spatial shift, up here. It completely changes our orientation and draws our attention to a higher plane. After being totally submerged in the abstract concept of temperature, suddenly, boom, there is a location, here, and a direction, up. Is this the narrator recognizing the rising chakra of a tailed beast? Or maybe it's a reference to the viewer looking up at the screen? Or is it the energy itself reaching a boiling point and rising to the surface? Whatever it is, it serves as literally the only moment of grounded reality in the entire transcript. It's a brief gasp of air before we're plunged right back into the fire.
And finally, Section 4, the final N.
So, the explainer ends on this mysterious, single-letter cliffhanger. Think about it. After the massive wave of heat, after the brief spatial shift up here, and a quick relapse right back into the heat, the entire record just cuts off at N. Not a full word, not a period, just a consonant. It really leaves us to wonder, did the power simply glitch the recording device out entirely, destroying the transcription process itself, or is there something more waiting to be decoded? Does the raw power of the Jinchuriki ultimately defy language entirely, ending not with a neat conclusion, but with a sudden silent blackout? Honestly, what happens when the heat finally consumes the machine trying to measure it?